It's March Madness, a time when all eyes are on the brackets and who is dominating on the court. Just win, baby. Well, I can tell you who is not winning. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. They just got called out by one of ESPN's most prominent hosts, Stephen Smith. I'm going to show clips of a visibly angry but composed Smith taking time out of the busiest time of the year for ESPN to excoriate Trump and Hegseth over the complete and utter nonsense that Hegseth has been doing at the Department of Defense. And what is he doing exactly? Oh, that's simple. He's constructing a white supremacy culture by erasing the contributions of non-whites and minorities from the history of the U.S. military. They had the audacity or the sheer and utter ignorance to erase Jackie Robinson. Yes, the man who broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball was drafted and served as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army during World War II. And they erased his profile. And when they did, they got called out so fast and so loudly that they couldn't restore the page fast enough. So in that space where sports and politics collide, Stephen Smith walked in and called out Trump and Hegseth for the crap they have been pulling before daring them to step into the ring with him, live and in public. And while that last part is metaphorical, this part is not. Smith did not pull any punches. Watch.
I don't think it was an honest mistake at all. A matter of fact, I think that there's a few things, not many, not all, but there's a few things this present administration is not being honest about. And we have to call it like we see it. You know, there's this effort, this concerted effort to eradicate DEI, as we all know. And one of the things is you've seen me, Molly, talking about politics. This subject intertwines politics and sports. So if we want to go there, let's go there. You know, they want to eradicate DEI programs and what have you. And what I've said to folks, particularly on the side of the GOP, is very, very simple. It's not so much that you want to eradicate DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. I'll let somebody else argue on behalf of that. What I like to focus on is how dare you try to ignore the reason for its existence in the first place. Similar to civil rights legislation in 1964, similar to things like affirmative action, similar to things like the Rooney Rule in the National Football League, etc. How dare you try to get away with highlighting why it needed to exist in the first place? It was because of the iniquities of folks in the United States of America. Primarily the white power structure that exists. It is a fact. It is known throughout history that it is a fact. They want to gloss over and erase the need for those things to take place to begin with. We were talking about the National Football League feeling compelled to insert a rule that mandated minorities actually get interviewed for jobs because they weren't getting interviewed for jobs. And so now you see a movement clearly provoked by a lot of folks on the side of the GOP. And clearly this administration has bought into it hook, line, and sinker, where a concerted effort is being made to scrub history. And so now we have an administration in place that has seemed to go on about the business of trying to scrub history to the point where you have Jackie Robinson, who integrated Major League Baseball, who served in the United States military and departed with honor. Okay, he was not dishonorably discharged. He was honorably discharged. This is an individual, Molly, I'm reading from here right now, where we're talking about a guy that joined the 761st Tank Battalion, known as the Black Panthers, drafted into military service in 1942, was court-martialed in July of 1944 after refusing an order by a driver to move to the back of an Army bus he had boarded. Yet and still, we see on the website for the Pentagon yesterday, page not found for a vast majority of the day before it was reinstated. And nobody is calling out the president, Donald Trump. I will. This is the same Donald Trump that looked at folks during the campaign in 2015 and 2024. And he said, what do you got to lose? Okay. Well, guess what? He won the popular vote. He won the electoral college vote. He won every swing state, okay? And in the process, his numbers improved from 2020 to 2024 with young blacks, young Hispanics, okay, and with blacks, Hispanics, and young voters overall. You're forgetting about those people now that you're in office, President Trump? They don't matter now? History doesn't matter? The iniquities of this country didn't matter? The insidious behavior and actions from an historical perspective, oh, we want to ignore all of that? It doesn't go down like that. But even in the midst of saying all of that, one has to acknowledge that when you look at the actions of this administration and you're talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you're equating that with black people, and you're using words like unqualified. Remember, he blamed DEI when a plane crashed, in the immediate aftermath of the plane crash in D.C., colliding with the helicopter, where lives were lost. The first words that came out of President Trump's mouth was DEI. What evidence do you have, President Trump? He had none. Admitted he had none, but still lent itself to DEI. Pete Hegseth is the head of the Defense Department. But the fact of the matter is, how is he not DEI? He was a soldier. And then he was a host on Fox News on the weekends. And he goes from that to being the head of a Defense Department that oversees more than 3.5 million people. How in the hell do you go from being a weekend host to being the head of over 3.5 million people for the Defense Department of the United States? He happens to be white, and we don't mention DEI when it comes to him. Why not? Why is it always attached to black people? This is the kind of stuff that we're asking ourselves. And on a day like today, it gives us more credence to ask that question because of what happened with Jackie Robinson, who served in our military, drafted, served our country, and for hours upon hours in a day, his stuff was scrubbed, and we're supposed to believe that's accidental.
Here's what I do know. Jackie Robinson served as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army during World War II, and of course, broke Major League Baseball's color barrier in 1947 when he debuted for the Brooklyn Dodgers. We'll leave it there.
Molly,
coming up. Yep.
Want to say one more thing.
Sure.
President Trump, I'm happy to sit down with you to have that conversation, sir. I'd love for you to try to defend it. Vice President Vance, you too. Pete Hegseth, you too. Stephen A. Smith is calling you out on national television. I'd love for you to sit down with the cameras rolling and try to defend this. It's ridiculous.
And speaking of history, this ending will go down in history. Sensing that Smith has taken too much airtime, Molly Karam tries to move it along, and that is where Smith hits the half-court shot at the buzzer. He makes a macho challenge for Trump, Vance, and Hegseth to face him live on camera and talk about what they've done, why they're opposed to DEI, and why they are denying the contributions of minorities for making this country great. I'm here to tell you, those three dudes are not going to take him up on it. There's no way they step into the ring with Smith. Trump is too demented. Vance won't get away with his Yale-educated condescending tactic. And Hegseth is just flat out not smart enough to get into any discussion of history. And it's too bad they are too scared to take on Smith. I know I'd be willing to watch it on pay-per-view. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.